Hello and welcome to another Wrestle Carnival preview. This time we're going to be talking about Wrestle Carnival Pure, taking place on Saturday, the 9th of October from the Portland Centre in Nottingham. And if you don't know, I'm Jonas from the Wrestling Jonas podcast. I'm the owner of the Jonas Podcasting Network, one of the sponsors to Wrestle Carnival. And I'm joined, as always, by Dave Bradshaw. Dave, great to have you back on again. How are we doing?
Good to see you, Jonas. Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm still kind of processing. I know I know it's our job to hype these shows, but oh my goodness, Carnival of Honor was something, wasn't it? That main event, Doug Williams and Dean Allmark. I've never seen anything quite like that. You know, it was the Pure Rules, right? For anyone who didn't see it, and so under Ring of Honor Pure Rules, and so there's a limited number of rope breaks, and so Doug Williams used the fact that he didn't have any rope breaks left to his advantage, so that he could hook up Dean Allmark for the cover. It was one of the most intelligent ways of winning a wrestling match I've ever seen. Doug Williams, don't tell him I said this, but he is a genius.
Absolutely, and no doubt the Pure Rules stipulations might come into play in the main event match that we're going to be discussing a bit later on. But Dave, brilliant to have you on to discuss the 7 matches that's going to be taking place at Wrestle Carnival Pure on Saturday, the 9th of October from the Portland Centre. And like you say, every single Wrestle Carnival card just seems to get better and better, and this one is no exception. But before we get stuck into the 7 matches and talk about our thoughts and preview each individual match and the competitors involved, any matches that's kind of catching your eye, that's standing out to you before we head into the event on Saturday?
Well, it's hard to look past the main event, isn't it? I mean, you look at Ridgeway, obviously 2-0 now in Wrestle Carnival.
Yeah.
And then you know, he's against just one of the world's greatest professional wrestlers. And so, you know, Chris Ridgeway, so it always seems like he's looking for that next challenge. He wants to go up another level and another level. Well, you can't go up many levels higher than Jonathan Gresham. So we're going to really see at Pure exactly what Chris Ridgeway is made of. And I hope he's ready for the challenge, because, you know, I think Chris Ridgeway is so talented that, well, I know we'll get to this. I don't want to spoil what we're going to say about the match when we talk about it in more detail, but he's so talented that it's almost, I think he maybe almost gets complacent sometimes about how comfortably he's going to beat most opponents he's in there with. Well, he's not in for a comfortable night on Saturday, is he?
No, definitely not. And got 3 women's matches amongst the 7 on the card on Saturday night, including Jordynne Grace versus Alex Windsor. So I can't wait to talk about that one. That's well, you've got to class it as a co-main event, surely.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously Jordynne Grace, world-class competitor, but yeah, we also what Alex Windsor is capable of as well at Carnival of Honor. So that's another one that is really, and again, I'm sure we'll talk about it in more depth in a minute. But it's, yeah, I mean, again, another card that you look at, and it's mouth-watering, isn't it, top to bottom?
It really is. It really is. So let's talk about the first match then. So the Strongman Gauntlet match. 6 competitors. We saw a Gauntlet match at the first show, a curtain call, back in September now. This one involving wrestling memes. Joe See Me, obviously the fan that was dressed up at the first show and won the whole thing. Shreddy Breck, Warren Banks, Man Like DeReese, and Big Guns Joe. So a fantastic range of talent in this Gauntlet match, Strongman Gauntlet match, no less. And a few newcomers to the Wrestle Carnival roster. But one particular intriguing matchup that I'm looking forward to seeing, one kind of match for the ages, has got to be Joe See Me versus Big Guns Joe. Do you think that when they clash, the roof on the Portland Centre is going to go off, surely?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of parallels between those two. So I think, you know, a lot of people have been saying that Joe See Me, as he's apparently now being called, just, you know, he was just Joe the fan to start with, but then he's modelled his look, his physique, all of it on Big Guns Joe. But I don't think you can really duplicate just the pure size of the biceps on Big Guns Joe. So it's, you know, he's one of those names in British wrestling who, until now, we hadn't had in Wrestle Carnival. We're looking forward to having him, and we will see whether this fairy tale story of Joe See Me is going to be able to continue against possibly the most powerful wrestler in the history of professional wrestling.
Absolutely. And of course, every carnival has its own strongman. And by the end of the night, by the end of this match, the strongman gauntlet, we will have Wrestle Carnival's first ever strongman. But like I say, some amazing talent there. Of course, we saw Warren Banks at the first show, Curtain Call. But a few newcomers. Great to see Shreddy Breck and Wrestling Memes, man like Doris on the card. And of course, Big Guns Joe making his Wrestle Carnival debut. So a few new faces for the Wrestle Carnival audience there, Dave.
Yeah, certainly are. And I think, a man like Doris has been just absolutely just tearing it up since things have come back from the pandemic. He's really just one of those guys. And he's another one like who was on the brink anyway, right before the pandemic when everything kind of shut down. He was there or thereabouts, going to be one of those names who was going to be in that next wave of talent to dominate British wrestling. So on paper, you'd have to. It's hard to say, but you look at Doris, I think. You'd probably look at Warren Banks because Banks, obviously, as you said, with that impressive win against Elijah at Curtain Call. So those two may be the favourites, but Big Guns Joe's so powerful. Shreddy Breck, for those who haven't seen him before, I worked with him a few times in Defiant Wrestling back when that was still around in 2018, 2019, and he's a powerhouse as well. So Strongman is right, and it's unpredictable. One name that's interesting that's missing, of course, is Charles Crowley.
Oh, I was wondering if you was going to bring him up. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, because he was in the first Gauntlet match at Curtain Call, caused quite a nuisance of himself there, and of course we saw him being quite problematic at Carnival of Honor as well. And as I understand it, I saw on the Wrestle Carnival Twitter that he's going to be in Nottingham this Saturday. I don't know what his plans are. He doesn't have an announced match, so I mean, I hope he's just bought a ticket and he's just going to sit there and behave himself. But I have a suspicion that that's not really in his DNA.
No, I think anywhere Mr. Charles Crowley is bound to be trouble. It'll be interesting to see if he pops up. It could pop up at any point during the evening, but I think, if you remember back to that Curtain Call Gauntlet match, Dave, he did announce himself as the true Carnival, Mr. Carnival. So I think he'll want a little piece of that strongman gauntlet, but we shall see. That will be a great match for sure. Let's talk about our next match, which it's going to be absolutely fantastic. Charly Morgan versus Jetta. So let's have a look at their resume. I mean, you've got Charly Morgan, former Eve champion and former two-time DOA women's champion, versus Jetta, who's been on the UK scene for 16 years, if I'm not mistaken. That's quite hard to believe, and she's the current Eve champion. So a ton of experience between these two outstanding athletes, these two outstanding wrestlers, an amazing amount of accomplishments between the two of them. But when Saturday comes, it's all about who's the best in the ring, and it should be a hell of a contest between two of the best the UK has to offer. So Dave, give us your thoughts on this matchup. It's going to be one of those matches you're not going to be able to take your eyes off.
Yeah, Charly Morgan and Jetta, have become pretty renowned as a power couple in pro wrestling. They're not going to be a couple on Saturday. They are going to be opponents across the ring from each other. Charly, I don't know very well. Jetta, I know quite well because Jetta's been around. I think as long or longer than I have in British wrestling. She's been doing her thing for 15 years, something like that, and I've had the pleasure a few times, but not for several years of calling one of her matches. So always great to see her. And I think it just speaks again to the sheer depth of the roster in the Wrestle Carnival women's division to see two talents like this, and it's taken until the third show, to be able to get these two, because there's such a lineup of people performing at Wrestle Carnival. So it's got to be now. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that the women's division in Wrestle Carnival is one of the most stacked with talent and one of the most competitive in British wrestling history. So both of them need a win. I mean, it's that kind of division at the moment where you cannot afford to lose, because it's a bit like if you're in a league in another sport, say football, and you lose one, but then everyone's within so close of points of each other that you lose one game and you drop 10 places down the league. That's what it kind of feels like with the women's division. So you've got to make an impact. You've got to make a good first impression, however stacked your resume is from what you've done elsewhere. And the pressure's on. Both of them I know very experienced wrestlers. They've got a lot of experience in these pressure situations, but they're going to need all of that experience because it's going to be a real pressure cooker at Pure.
It really is, and these two in particular know each other very, very well. Probably know each other's kind of tricks of the trade, and it's going to be interesting. It's only one of those that you can't pick too easily for a winner, if I'm perfectly honest with you. But it's going to be a phenomenal match. And like you say, the women's division in Wrestle Carnival is so deep and so rich that these two are going to put on a fantastic display. So I, for one, can't wait. Let's have a look at the next match, which has been building over the last, two shows, really. You got Adam Bolt and Riley Nova versus Will Cruz and Blake. Now, these two pairings have kind of had their scuffles at the end of matches from the last two shows, and in particular when Will Cruz defeated Kyle Kingsley at Carnival of Honor last month. I know that Blake came out and Adam Bolt was there, Riley Nova was there, and there was some shenanigans after the match, which obviously set up this tag team match. You've obviously got two kind of dynamics here. You've obviously got the big, strong brutes, as in Will Cruz and Blake, against the faster, more agile, more dynamic Bolt and Nova. And they're going to have their wits about them on Saturday, Dave, because if they get caught and if they get shoved around that ring like Will Cruz and Blake are likely to do, then it could be over pretty quickly. But I think I like the contrasting styles, and I think I'm very intrigued about how this match is going to go, and I'm very interested to see who might come out on top. But give us your thoughts.
I think they're insane. I honestly think Adam Bolt and Riley Nova are insane. I mean, what are they? I think in a way it's on one level it's admirable, because it's like they're trying to stand up to two behemoths who have proven themselves in our first two shows to be kind of bullies. But I mean, it's I don't want to write them off. And you're right. There's a contrast in styles, but on paper it's a mismatch, right? I mean, it's
100%. Yeah,
David versus Goliath and then some. You can throw out any cliches you want, but it's like, I don't know if you're Adam Bolt or Riley Nova. I don't really know how you envisage that playing out, because you've got two monsters who are just absolutely just merciless and determined to make their mark. You saw a curtain call after the Gauntlet match that we were talking about, just what they're prepared to do. We saw more of it after that match with Kyle Kingsley at Carnival of Honor as well. So they're on just a path of destruction, and I don't think, again, no disrespect whatsoever to Adam Bolt and Riley Nova, two up and coming young wrestlers, but you've got to pick your battles. Like if you're trying to make a name for yourself and try and impress as a relative newcomer on the British wrestling scene, then you've got to put yourself in a match where you have a chance. Yes, it was bold of Adam Bolt to try and kind of stand up for what was right at Carnival of Honor. But what he did at the end there, when he cleared the ring, all he's done is enrage these two beasts. So I'm sorry, I'm really not trying to be pessimistic. I'm not trying to be negative, but like, I don't get it. I don't get, other than some sort of hope of a fairy tale, I don't get what Adam Bolt and Riley Nova think they are going to achieve in this tag team match. Maybe that's why I'm not a wrestler. Maybe that's why I'm more comfortable behind my commentary desk, because I guess fortune favors the bold. But I just cannot foresee any scenario where this ends well for Bolt or Nova. I mean, go and prove me wrong, but that's how I see it, I'm afraid.
I mean, I agree with your sentiments 100%, but I've always rooted, as a wrestling fan, I've always rooted for the underdog. And I know that Bolt and Nova, I think they would probably even class themselves as underdogs, but I think that's going to be their motivation, to go out there on Saturday and to stick and move, and use their pace potentially to wear the big guys down. But like you say, they only need to be caught once. And we saw what Will Cruz was capable of at Carnival of Honor. We know how big and powerful and destructive Blake is. Those two combined, you're probably looking at 600 pounds of muscle and, just ferocity. But yeah, Adam Bolt and Riley Nova, they've got to be on their A game. They better get their roller skates on to stay away from these two big guys. But that's what intrigues me, and I can't wait for Saturday to see.
Again, Jonas, though, I'm not trying to doubt their motivation. Really, I'm honestly not trying to say anything bad about the guys. Good for them. I'm only saying it from a perspective of their own health. I admire the ambition. I admire that you want to make a name for yourself and you want to stand up for what's the right thing to do. We're all appalled by what Will Cruz and Blake have been doing, but there's standing up for what's right, and then there's going beyond what's realistic that you can achieve. And I fear for them. And as I say, I hope you're right. I hope their speed, their agility can see them through, and at the very least help them escape it without serious injury. But Will Cruz and Blake are no joke. Like they're not messing around, and I don't know. I mean, good luck to them, but
we shall see. That's going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to that match. I really, really am. Speaking of matches I'm looking forward to, how about Mercedes Blaze versus Rio? So, Dave, I think, as we discussed earlier, women's wrestling on the Wrestle Carnival agenda is kind of right up there. And like I say, creating one of the best women's roster in the UK, if not pretty much anywhere nowadays. But if you look at their credentials, Mercedes Blaze is the current Apex Women's Champion and World War Wrestling Women's Champion, up against a 3-time Tidal Women's Champion and former 2-time PCW Women's Champion. So these two ladies have got the credentials, they've got the experience. And like I say, on Saturday night, it's going to be a hell of a battle between these two. Like I say, a lot of experience. However, Saturday, it could be a case of which one takes advantage of maybe the smallest of opportunities to get the victory, Dave.
Yeah, Rio, I know by reputation, and I know that all those accolades you said, I've heard, great things about what she's done in Tidal, for example. And I know that pre-pandemic, she was starting to get kind of invites to go and wrestle all around the world. In India, I know, for example, I think she went. I think it was prior to before all the lockdowns started. So I think she managed to do that. But in any case, she was definitely starting to get international attention. So she's another one. I was saying about man like Doris, but she's another one who was in that bracket prior to the pandemic. But Mercedes Blaze, I do know from personal experience of commentating her. I commentated on some of her matches over in Frontline Wrestling in London in 2018, certainly 2019, and I've had nothing but positive things to say about her potential. Not so much her attitude sometimes. I think her disdain towards her opponents and her self-confidence can I'm trying to choose my words carefully because I don't want to put myself in physical danger, but she's it borders on arrogance, I think, sometimes, the self-confidence of Mercedes Blaze, but it's not without foundation. She's very, very, very good.
Well, she can back it up. She
the problem is
she talk and walk the walk.
The problem is she knows she's very, very, very good.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that sometimes gets under the skin of some fans. But to be honest, I don't think she cares. You know what I mean? Because from her perspective, it's all about being a dominant force in British women's wrestling. And that's what she, again, pre-pandemic was very, very much starting to be. If you'd asked me in the start of 2020, in fact, I think I wrote a blog article about some of the talents I was expecting to come through in 2020, before 2020 did not go to plan.
Exactly.
And she was one of those top names on that list because just the aggression she showed, the ambition. Mercedes Blaze is just, she's the real deal. And so again, it's hard for me to call the match, call in advance, predict what I think is going to happen because I haven't seen Rio in person. But Rio, I know by reputation. Mercedes Blaze, I know from personal experience, having called some of her matches, is going to be a huge presence in worldwide women's wrestling for years to come.
Oh, absolutely. You spoke about two dominant women here, two alpha females, you could say. And, you know, when they go up against each other on Saturday, it's going to be one of their matches, a hard hitting match between two women that you know, they don't settle for second best very easily. It's going to be interesting to see how that match unfolds. But Dave, another match that we've all been looking forward to is The Answer, Joe Hendry against Jay Joshua. So we saw Jay go up against Chris Ridgeway in a submissions match at Curtain Call back in September. And then we saw The Answer, Joe Hendry, go up against Leighton Buzzard last month at the Carnival of Honor. So two phenomenal athletes, two fantastic wrestlers. And I think that Joe Hendry, dare I say it, might already be looking beyond Jay Joshua at his match against Doug Williams in November at Mania. So that could potentially allow Jay Joshua the opportunity to maybe capitalize on that and take advantage of the fact that Joe Hendry might be looking past him. But I'd love to know your thoughts, because this is a great opportunity for Jay Joshua. He's got something to prove now off the back of his loss to Ridgeway in the first show. And maybe, you know, he might be a tougher competitor for Joe Hendry than Joe Hendry is going to give him credit for.
Yeah, I think it's a very good match in terms of how well matched they are. You know, similar backgrounds in terms of their amateur wrestling and all of that kind of stuff. And so I was very impressed with Jay Joshua. First of all, first time I'd called one of his matches was at Curtain Call, and yes, he lost to Chris Ridgeway. But as we've already said, and I'm sure we'll say again before we finish tonight, there's no shame in losing to Chris Ridgeway, right?
No.
And it was a close run thing for Jay Joshua. I thought he did very well there. I thought he more than merited an invite to come back and have a second go at getting his maiden victory at Wrestle Carnival. That said, last time at Carnival of Honor, Joe Hendry, it was a new Joe Hendry, not just in terms of I know he's now going by The Answer. He seems to have a fresh motivation to claim what he sees as his rightful spot on top of the wrestling world, but just on physique. I mean, I think he weighed in
about 40 pounds of muscle there.
Yeah, he weighed in, was it 261?
Yeah,
I think something like that for Carnival of Honor. I mean, and you can see it. I've been calling Joe Hendry matches for years, and I've never ever seen just the raw power on Joe Hendry that you saw. It wasn't, you know, it's not the changes he has made physique wise are not just aesthetic. Like they have real results in what he's doing in ring. And you know, Leighton Buzzard, who's rightly considered one of those names who's going to be huge. Ultimately he did well, but he couldn't find a way to neutralize that power of Joe Hendry. And
Hendry was dominant, wasn't he? He was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, and I wonder whether. I don't know how Jay Joshua does that. I think Jay Joshua is obviously a bigger frame, you know, stronger probably than Leighton Buzzard. So maybe that gives him something more of a chance. But again, Joe Hendry is someone I know quite well, and there have been times in Joe Hendry's career where that motivation is just through the roof, you know, and you just see it. You can almost literally see a fire burning in his eyes when Joe Hendry is determined to prove something to someone, normally to himself, to be honest, because he pushes himself harder than, you know, he's his own biggest critic. If he's not a multiple-time world champion simultaneously in every promotion on the planet, then he doesn't feel like he's good enough. But that's what champions are made of, isn't it? You know, it's Absolutely. Those people who are absolutely obsessed with being the best, almost to an unhealthy degree, at being the best in their profession is what Joe Hendry is. And so my experience of Jay Joshua being somewhat limited, I was impressed. I think he's going to be a good match. He's the kind of guy who you think could hang with Joe Hendry and take him for, you know, quite a serious, you know, close run thing. But Joe Hendry's in that zone. He's in that Joe Hendry zone that I've seen a couple of times before. And with that added power, with how he's worked on himself physically during this enforced downtime over the past few months, it's quite hard to look past him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm particularly looking forward to, as you mentioned, their backgrounds in kind of grappling and amateur wrestling and how that plays out as well. And like I said, we saw that the power and the dominance of Joe Hendry back at Carnival of Honor against Leighton Buzzard. Here it is going to be a different type of opponent, a different type of match. And it might be more similar to the match we saw Jay Joshua against Ridgeway to Carnival of Honor. It could be more ground-based. It could be more submission-based. But I think that the power of Joe Hendry kind of could dictate the closing of the match. But I guess as long as Jay Joshua's done his homework, I think if he's done his homework, he could actually be going in with a bit of an advantage, knowing kind of what he's about to let himself in for.
Well, I think that was ultimately the undoing of Leighton Buzzard, is Hendry was able to dictate the pace of the match, the style of the match. Part of that's not just the power differential, but it's the inexperience of someone like Leighton Buzzard compared to someone like Joe Hendry. But a lot of it is Joe Hendry being the super confident person that he is, combined with those physical assets that he always had, but now has in abundance. It's very, very easy to end up wrestling the match that Joe Hendry wants to wrestle. And if you're Jay Joshua, even though the match you want to wrestle might be somewhat similar because your styles are similar in a lot of ways, you can't let Joe Hendry dictate the match, dictate the pace. In fact, I would say if for example, if Hendry seems to be wanting to go at a methodical pace, Jay Joshua needs to do the opposite, even if that wouldn't be his first choice normally. If Hendry's trying to do it at one level, you take it the opposite way. You're going to have to surprise Joe Hendry. You're going to have to do things he's not expecting to try and sort of take him off his game, take him out of that laser-like focus. And that's, I would think, your best chance against Joe Hendry. But it's very easy for me to say that sitting here. I would think it's a lot harder to put that into practice.
Oh, another match I'm really looking forward to. That's going to be absolutely fantastic. Let's talk about Alex Windsor versus Jordynne Grace then. In my opinion, could easily be one half of a double main event. I mentioned it at the top of the broadcast. This could very well main event the whole show. Who knows? At last month's Carnival of Honor, we saw a fantastic match between Hyan and Alex Windsor for the Heart of Shimmer Championship. But here she'll be going up against former Impact Women's Champion, former Progress Women's Champion in Jordynne Grace. So now, as I said, I'm buzzing for this one, Dave. For me, this one is hard to call. For my money, this could easily be the match of the night when you consider all the experience and the talent in the ring between these two competitors. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a pretty reasonable case for saying that Alex Windsor had the match of the night at Carnival of Honor. As I said, I think Williams and Allmark was spectacular as well. But that Heart of Shimmer title match against Hyan was not only was it a great match, but I'm sure from Alex Windsor's perspective, she's not worried about how many stars people are rating the match. She's worried about whether she won the title or not, and ultimately she didn't. But she came pretty close, and that was the first time that title has been defended on British soil. And Alex Windsor came within a hair there of making history, but she didn't do it, and that will have been over this past month, just eating away at Alex Windsor. Remember, Alex Windsor has only recently been coming back to wrestling after a pretty long, hiatus. So she's going to be, she's going to have to sort of pick herself up. It's not the start to her comeback that she would have liked. It very, very nearly was, but it wasn't quite. And so she's going to have to take that defeat on the chin, not let it get her down, because as you say, Jordynne Grace, one of the best in the world. But Alex Windsor, I think, proved at Carnival of Honor against another one of the best in the world in Hyan, that she's up there. And even having taken that time off, we always talk about ring rust. I don't think Alex Windsor looked like she'd lost a step. And she'll be a real challenge for Jordynne Grace, to the point that I wouldn't say Grace is the favorite at all. I think this is a coin toss in terms of, who's likely to walk out victorious. And as you say, because it's that kind of match, because it's that close, and because they're both so good, that's kind of when you've got those ingredients, you're sort of getting into kind of perfect storm territory for a show stealing match, and that's what I fully expect us to see on Saturday.
Absolutely, and it's one of those matches, Dave, where Alex Windsor can do all the research and probably is going into this match on Saturday knowing an awful lot about Jordynne Grace, but Jordynne Grace, may not be able to do the same amount of research on Alex Windsor because she's been out the last couple of years. She's come back after some horrendous knee injuries, so it's not as much recent content for Jordynne to kind of do her research on Alex. So that could play in Alex Windsor's favour. That she probably knows her opponent better than Jordynne knows her opponent, if that makes sense. And I think that this is going to be a fantastic match. Like you say, Alex Windsor, she does know how to hang with the best. She had a fantastic match with Hyan at Carnival of Honor. And this one, like I say, two different contrasting styles once again. But I think that, like I say, potentially match of the night. I think they're going to give the audience a hell of an encounter.
Yeah, I do. I think your point is a good one about Jordynne Grace not having recent research on Alex Windsor. I would caution. I would give one caveat on that prior to her injuries and taking time off, Alex Windsor was already one of the most highly regarded women's wrestlers on the planet. So it's not like Jordynne Grace will be Alex Windsor. I don't know who that is. She will know Alex Windsor extremely well. But you're right. It's an Alex Windsor from quite a while ago. And so the question is, what has Alex Windsor changed in her game, in the time she's had off? Are there weaknesses there from those injuries, that Grace can exploit? It's very hard to, it's very hard for her to have recent intelligence, if you like, on Alex Windsor. And so potentially in a match where there's very fine margins, yes, that could be one of the things that gets Jordynne Grace over the line. But that's not a prediction. I'm in absolutely no position to predict this match because, as I say, coin toss, as far as I'm concerned, it could go either way.
Absolutely. It's another one of them matches, isn't it? It's a pick 'em, and it's going to be one of them that is going to keep you on the edge of your seat until the very end. And like I say, no, I don't think any of these matches we've discussed so far have been easy to pick, with the possible exception of the tag match. But like I say, the underdogs are my favourite for sure going into that one. But let's talk about potentially the other half of the co-main event. This one could very well headline the whole show, the Pure Rules match. Chris Ridgeway versus Jonathan Gresham. Dave, Gresham posted a video a few days ago where he stated that he's going to treat this match like a championship match and to go out there to give the Wrestle Carnival fans a hell of a match. But in my opinion, Gresham, he has a point to prove, Dave, having recently lost his Ring of Honor Pure Rules Championship only last month. So that's got to hurt, and he's got to be coming into this match with a lot to prove. I think he said that he was a 12-1 in Pure Rules matches. But as for Chris Ridgeway, he's undefeated in Wrestle Carnival, and he's not going to want to lose that undefeated streak anytime soon. But this will, as you mentioned earlier, this will definitely be Ridgeway's toughest opponent since he started with Wrestle Carnival a couple of months ago. So this is going to be a really tough, close match with both wrestlers internationally renowned, both wanting to prove a point and neither of them wanting to give up so easily. And as we mentioned, the Pure Rules stipulation, especially regarding the rope breaks, came into play. Doug Williams versus Dean Allmark back at Carnival of Honor last month. And no doubt they'll come into play again this time round in the Portland Center. But Dave, give us your thoughts on these two tremendous athletes, these two tremendous wrestlers, and what sort of match we're likely to see on Saturday.
Yes, Ridgeway is as we've seen, is Chris Ridgeway. In the two matches we've seen him against Jay Joshua and Carlos Romo. Both of those guys, very, very talented. Both, real challenges, and Ridgeway came through both of those matches. It didn't come through unscathed. Both men gave him a real challenge, but he came through them, and even to come through them is something that 99% of people wouldn't be able to do. 99% of people in British wrestling, even so. So Ridgeway is on fire. Ridgeway is really just this kind of, it feels like he's just kind of runaway train in British wrestling at the moment, right? That there's who can possibly stop him. That's how it certainly felt to me since everything's come back from the pandemic. But we're still in, I think we're still in early days post pandemic. So sometimes some of these things that look, sorry to use another football analogy, but early in the season a team can look really good, and it might not last all the time. So it's maybe a little premature to be saying like that. Oh, Ridgeway's going to be the man in British wrestling for a while. But based on what we're seeing from early results at the beginning of this kind of new chapter of British wrestling in Wrestle Carnival and elsewhere in these kind of tentative early few months since everything's come back, there's very few people who've looked more impressive than Ridgeway. Jonathan Gresham is someone I commentated on one of his matches. It's like December 2018, a tag match in Defiant, and Gresham, when you meet him, very sort of very humble guy, like very sort of personable, really nice, and I guess I noticed it because I'm quite tall, right? But he's 5'4", Jonathan Gresham, and so in a sort of cliched, stereotyped, what traditional people thinking of that wrestling's a big man's game and everything, you kind of think, well, how is this guy able to kind of compete, at what is for a very low height? But he is, the way his style works, that height works to his advantage, right? And he's used that height. It helps him get out of predicaments that other people wouldn't be able to. And he's realized what kind of style someone of his frame and his natural assets can utilize to make him one of the best in the world. And over years, he's been wrestling. I think 2005 he debuted, so he's 16-year veteran now. He has quite rightly earned a reputation as one of the absolute finest technical wrestlers on the planet, to the point that he's been doing YouTube videos coaching people how to be better wrestlers. He's so highly regarded in terms of his technical abilities that, as I said at the top of the show, it's hard to think of anyone who would be more of a challenge for Ridgeway, or for anyone. If we're trying to say to Chris Ridgeway, okay, you're on a roll, let's see, how many notches we can take it up in terms of level of opponent. There's not much we could do that would be higher than Jonathan Gresham. So the upside of that, if you're Chris Ridgeway, is if you do win against, as you say, under pure rules, in a match against the guy who was the Ring of Honor Pure Champion, a title that was revived in 2020. He was the first champion of that new revived title and held the title for over 300 days before, as you say, he lost it just a month or so ago. If you're Chris Ridgeway and you beat Jonathan Gresham in Jonathan Gresham's kind of match, then what does that mean for the status of Chris Ridgeway in terms of his ability to say, I'm a major player in the pro wrestling world? I think it's massive if he wins.
Oh, huge. Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, Jonathan Gresham's got a point to prove, having just recently lost the championship. But I mean, if Ridgeway pulls off the victory, then it's taken him to another level, in my opinion.
Yeah, but again, it's a big if though, because Jonathan Gresham is every bit what I've just said. In terms of his skill, it's not hyperbole. It really is. He's one of those guys you have to see him to believe how good he is technically. You hear about other wrestlers being called, the man of 1,000 holds or 10,000 holds. Well, he literally knows 10 counters to every counter to every move. It's that kind of encyclopedic with Jonathan Gresham. So we'll see. The other thing I'll say about Ridgeway, by the way, is that because this match is under pure rules. Now, both of the submission matches that we've seen Ridgeway in Wrestle Carnival so far both he and his opponent have relied, understandably, on multiple rope breaks because there were no limit on rope breaks, right? Both of Ridgeway's matches so far have been submission matches, and quite often the easiest way to escape a submission, rather than try and power your way out or counter or reverse, if you're within reach of the bottom rope, is to go there. It's only an option 3 times in this kind of situation. So that's another new way in which we're testing Ridgeway. It's a stipulation that Gresham will be very, very used to, having had those 300 days of defending a championship under those rules. Whereas for Ridgeway, who's been competing in a lot of submission matches, but not that many with limits on rope breaks, that is a new twist and a new dynamic that he's going to have to work into his strategy. I think he's more than capable of it. I'm not saying that that's a fatal flaw that's going to cost him the match, but it is another test in a way that it's not so much of a test for Gresham, because we know Gresham is a known quantity in Ring of Honor pure rules type matches like this, whereas Ridgeway we haven't really seen do that. So we'll have to see.
Absolutely. And remember, like the Doug Williams, Dean Allmark match from last month, that was a 30-minute time limit match. I'm assuming that the match between Gresham and Ridgeway will have a similar time limit. If so, I can see this one go into the limit. And like I say, a pinfall or a submission will be at the death. It's not going to be one of them 5-10 minute matches. It's going to go the distance, and it's going to be a hell of a match, hell of an encounter, hell of a pure rules match between these two. But
I'm not sure. Sorry, just quickly.
Go for it.
I don't know if I agree, actually, because I think you're absolutely right. It could go the distance, and as a fan, I hope it does. I want to see this go a long time. But if there's one thing we've seen from Ridgeway, and that we know about Jonathan Gresham anyway, is that they're both so dangerous, particularly with the submission holds, but in all kinds of ways. With Gresham, he knows 10 million different ways to pin you, that the match could end in an instant, at any time, because either man could put the other in a hold that no human being could do anything but tap out to. And so, I hope it goes a long time, but it's one of those matches that could go half an hour, or a minute and a half in, one of them could manage to surprise their opponent. And so it's one of those matches that could end at any time. But I hope it goes all night. I'd love to watch it for hours, but we'll see.
Very good point. And like I say, that intriguing element of having the pure rules, as we found out last month, kind of adds that extra intrigue, that extra layer, that extra suspense. But Dave, it's been phenomenal speaking to you again. Previewing Saturday's show, Wrestle Carnival Pure, from the Portland Centre, Saturday the 9th of October. I don't know about yourself, but having spoken about them 7 matches, I'm even more excited, even more buzzing. I'm sure you are too. But Dave, it's been fantastic speaking to you again, and thank you very much for your time.
I'll see you on Saturday. I'm looking forward to it.